First of all, my name is Shane Paciello. I'll be taking over moderator duties for the next few hours. I'm a project manager here with the Paciello Group, and it's great to be part of this day here of Inclusive Design 24, especially as we hit the home stretch here, the last few talks of the day. Up next, we have Makayla Lewis. Now, for those of you who don't know Makayla, she has a PhD in human-computer interaction from City University in London. There she focused on social media, change management, and motor impairments, specifically around cerebral palsy. Now Makayla is a postdoctoral researcher at Royal Holloway University of London on cybersecurity cartography projects, where she spends her time listening to and crafting user stories. And today Makayla is going to be sharing her PhD research and whether it has impacted social media change deployment with regard to users with cerebral palsy. So Makayla, if you're ready, I'll turn it over to you as you do the presentation, Like It or Lump It, an exploration of social media change and its implications for users with motor impairments.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So for the next hour or so, we're going to basically just go over what Shane has just been saying. So we'll get going. Hang on, one sec. Wait. Okay, so he's already given me an introduction, but essentially what I'm passionate about is storytelling. I absolutely heart understanding users, whether they have disabilities, they're in information security where I'm currently sitting, or they're just people who struggle to tell their stories. So the whole premise of this presentation is storytelling from the perspective of people with cerebral palsy. I mean, if you have any questions, do feel free to ask. I'm going to keep an eye on the chat room. Okay. So my motivation. I have a very personal motivation to cerebral palsy. On the left-hand side of the slides, you'll see a picture of my mum and me, who is really dear to my heart. She has cerebral palsy and is a wheelchair user. She also has a natural speech impairment. And for her, social media has always been a lifeline, a communication lifeline for her. But I've noticed over the years that whenever major changes would occur, I would get phone calls, really distressing phone calls from her saying, I can't use it, I've just been in all day and I've not really been able to communicate with anyone. And that really, I'm not gonna lie, it bugged the bloody hell out of me that this was the case, because it's something that's so valuable to her and so many other people. So I decided that I wanted to do a PhD on it. And EPRSC, a funding body in the UK, gave me money to do so. So what I started off with was just kind of exploring the very academic way of exploring, doing interviews. I also followed around loads of people with cerebral palsy over a 3-week period and did observations. So the idea of this presentation is just to kind of summarize what I did, the general results, and this step process that I came up with at the end, and how it's been deployed since. I finished my PhD in September 2012, so we're going to end the presentation with me going over what social media like Twitter and Facebook have been doing since. Okay. So an example of change, if you're not really aware, if you're not a massive social networking person, on this screen right now is a Twitter screen dump from 2011, and at the bottom is another one from from this afternoon. And essentially, it has become a lot more complex in terms of what you can do and what you can't do. That's generally the premise of this slide. And the same can be true for Facebook. Facebook has undergone many changes, but essentially it's just become flatter and more complex in what you can share with fellow people. So my first question, throughout these slides, I'm going to be placing questions to you guys. If you can give answers, that would be brilliant. Yes, Mike, I totally agree. User stories are key. Do you think frequent and abrupt social media changes impact user with motor impairment, specifically cerebral palsy? So if you can give your responses, that will be interesting to know. Thank you, Claire. So yes, it does. So from those interviews and observations that I did, I really got to know the community. And one thing that I was seeing, and they were verbally telling me, not even just them, one thing I found from doing the observations is that their carers, their family members, the people that they live with and communicate with regularly, dramatically help them with their communication. And one of the things that the users were saying and the people surrounding them were saying is that task relearning was a massive bugbear. Whenever a major change occurred, it meant that they had to relearn a task. And if you're using assistive technologies, you've memorized what you need to do to log out, to log in, to send a message. You've memorized it, and you wake up one day and that's completely changed. That's not something that you get over within 2 minutes, like social media providers assume is going to happen. That's not the case at all. Another thing is personal and use confidence. So you've learned this, how to carry out this particular task. For example, send the message. Now it's gone. Your confidence has just plummeted at this point, they were telling me. And in terms of the changes, it was this poor introduction of UI features. It was removing of accessible features, which to me is just insane. I don't know what people were thinking with that. And just slow input speed. So when I say slow input speed, you'll see later what I mean by that. So here it is, slow and frustrating interaction. So here are a few examples, 2 pictures of people who use assistive technologies, who have cerebral palsy, which I took when I was doing the observations, using pointer devices, large keyboards, and talkers. And in the picture on the right, she has her carer with her, who occasionally help her use the interaction. But when her carer wasn't with her, when one of the changes on Facebook occurred, she was just flummoxed. Her response was, Makayla, what am I going to do? I don't know how to log out. Is my stuff, like, really, is it secure? She got really panicked over the situation. And from a researcher's point of view, who also has a parent that has cerebral palsy, I was in an uncomfortable situation. Like, okay, my academic mind is saying I cannot intervene, I just need to, like, help her, but I can't do that. So that was a real frustration throughout the whole of the research, just to observe people through the frustration and then help them afterwards. So I think that is definitely something we need to definitely look into, because I think it kind of does distract people from wanting to take part in research. Another one is independence and privacy. This picture just says it all. For those who might be visually impaired, essentially it is a person with cerebral palsy in a wheelchair, using Facebook, but a change had just occurred on the day that I was observing him. So he handed his keyboard to his carer. But the problem with this image is that his carer he's only known for 1 week. So what impact does that have on your independence and the privacy? What are you going to share? If you're pissed off with someone, you're not going to share it. If you're going to say something which is really, really personal, you're not going to share it with your carer for them to type it in if you don't even know the person. So independence and privacy in terms of communication was a massive issue. So when deploying change, have you considered any of these impacts? Any of you? I'm keeping an eye on the chat as I go. So monitoring real change. What I found is that a lot of people, in accessibility, a few as well, have looked at change management from the perspective of websites, some in terms of social media. But when I've spoken to service providers, they've said, well, what is that based on? Is that even really based on solid research? I mean, it's really simple. I don't really need to hear this. So the point of my PhD was to provide that data. You cannot say what I'm saying is not true or right when the data is there in your face. So what I essentially did is I looked at Facebook and Twitter. I downloaded 2 million tweets from Twitter over a 6-month period, which was about the new Twitter hashtag just over a year ago. And after that, for the purposes of this presentation, we're going to be talking about 500,000 of them approximately. And from Facebook, I downloaded 431 public blog comments, which were related to auto tagging, and I also associated them with 13,000 likes. And basically what I wanted to do, I wanted to get an overview of users' reactions regarding their tweets and their comments during specific peaks. And then I followed that by looking at each peak with an in-depth look of the users' reactions using an event sampling method. So what I thought I would do next, rather than just quickly going into what I found, was to kind of give you an overview of what I actually kind of did. So quickly, I did some sentiment analysis, which is a very common trait, but the way I went about it was quite different. You tend to see people in academic research use automated bots to do sentiment analysis, but they don't understand sarcasm. I'm highly sarcastic, especially when I'm on Twitter. I will write something, but then I might have like laugh out loud or not at the end, and sentiment analysis tools don't pick that up. So when I ran all the stuff through first. It was either very neutral or too positive, and I'm thinking, no, that's not right. There is no way everyone is that happy about these changes, because I'm bloody pissed. They must be pissed. So I then manually read all of those Twitter comments, manually read all of those Facebook comments, which took a huge proportion of my PhD time, but I really think it made me understand people's frustrations and essentially their stories. So from that, from the sentiment analysis, I established, I mean, it was quite neutral at the beginning. There was a lot of discontent because people just wasn't really sure what it was. They weren't really sharing how it was going to be rolled out, who was going to get it. There was also problems. So they were rolling out, in terms of new Twitter, a system, a user interface that had bugs which they were aware of, but they just thought, you know, it wasn't important. We just want to get it out there as soon as possible. That's how it came across to users. And that really, to be frank, pissed them off. As time went on, they thought, okay, what we're going to do, everyone's really pissed. We're going to get celebrities involved. Yeah, because we all listen to people like, you know, will.i.am and Angelina Jolie. They really impact what we do in our lives. No, that's not the case. But they still attempted to go from that perspective. I mean, it swapped it around a bit. People, okay, well, will.i.am's using it. I'll give it another try. But then they logged back in. They were like, this is just bloody rubbish. And they just became more and more pissed in that the service platform was just not listening to the issues. The subject. So what they were generally asking is what it was. When was it going to happen? When was I going to get it? How was I going to get it? And who was going to get it? These are really simple questions. So I don't understand why social media providers just cannot offer them. Because it allows you to, when you offer such answers to such simple questions, you can plan. And planning is what the main issues was that we found in the interviews and observations, is that if these changes were occurring, you were not giving them enough time to plan, to get people in to help them to adjust, or to get appropriate assistive technology that can help them move forward. There's no way of planning. I mentioned earlier that there were problems, and the problems were just aesthetic problems. They were just how to use it, performance, platform compatibility, recovery, and most importantly, accessibility. For some bizarre reason, they felt the need. It really, to this day, even though it was like a year and a half ago now, it still bugs me to no end. They felt the need to remove accessible features, and I just cannot understand it. Just cannot at all. It's just completely unacceptable. Following that, I use this graph simply because it highlights the acceptance rate. So at the beginning, it was like 2-3% people that kind of were accepting the new changes. But as time went on and they realized that the social media provider wasn't listening, they were removing features that were accessible, and they were endorsing it by ridiculous celebrities like Angelina Jolie that they could not relate to. Acceptance rate shot up to almost 30%. Just was like, no, I'm not doing this, and they just, in a lot of cases, just logged out from the platform completely. But then if you go back to what I was saying about my mum, this is a platform that she finds really useful. So the fact that your change is cutting off a very key form of communication is just appalling to me. So I did, as I said earlier on, I did the same kind of thing, downloaded going off 500 messages from Facebook, and found very similar things to what I've been talking about, which was very Twitter orientated. But this quote kind of summarizes it. Facebook are never thinking about us users. We don't need this feature. I don't know why they've done this. Why have I got it, but my friends don't? I'm not going to say that word, but it's basically F*******. This is how do I opt out? So basically they were getting quite aggressive, and this is one thing I found about social media. When people are pissed, they have no problem swearing. So I had like thousands of swear words littered through my data, and I think it adds a punch. So if any of you ever look at any of my PhD or any of my papers, those swear words haven't been removed, because I think it really does show the frustration. I'm just checking the chat room. Yeah, sorry about that. I'm currently using British English. If it's a problem, do let me know. Okay, the next question. Do you think about what do you think about Twitter and Facebook's change deployments, and what we basically just discussed? And do you think it reflects any changes that you implement, not necessarily in social media, it could be any website that you are managing? So from there, I got all of these responses from Twitter, from Facebook, I had the interviews, I had the observations. So I established what the key issues were, and I created a matrix that kind of, well, not necessarily a matrix, you could plausibly say it was a timeline that showed what had happened in both examples, where negative things had occurred, and I started to remove them. And if we removed them, we had gaps, and those gaps were usually time-based things, so we could shorten the process down. So I decided that I was going to go back out to the CP, cerebral palsy community, users of social media, and ask them what exactly they wanted and show them this timeline. The reason why I don't have the timeline on the slide is because it was a manual timeline that I love to draw things by hand, and it was 5 meters long, and I did a screenshot of it, and like you would not have even been able to read it, so I removed it. But essentially, it was a timeline that showed what had happened over that 6-month period. I went back out and did a survey with the users, and I basically asked them, what do you want? And they said that they wanted knowledge. They wanted consultation throughout the change. They wanted consultation after the change so they can tell them what went wrong, so when they do future changes, they could take that into consideration. And they wanted help and support. I mean, these things are so obvious, so bloody obvious. But when I've spoken to service providers, they're like, well, yeah, it's really obvious, but we don't think we really need to provide it because there's no real hardcore data about it. Well, I have 500,000 tweets and 500 Facebook comments. There is data, don't lie. That's how I'm basically, my response to them is. So from that, I decided that I was going to do a 5-step process for change. And this slide basically has the illustration of what the change looks like, but I've broken it down. And that's what we're going to kind of discuss next. So essentially, before you do a change in a social media setting, you need to provide knowledge. What is the change? Why is the change occurring? When will the change occur? And how will users receive the change? Again, this is so simple. So simple, to the point you can probably hear a little bit of banging here and there because I'm like banging my desk because it's so simple. Number 2, what I've referred to is unfreeze. You want to roll out the new interface to all OSN users, all social media users. Why would you roll it out to only partly some? In this particular community, everyone is helping each other. And if only one person's experiencing it and no one else is, you're going to create panic amongst the others because they're going to see the frustration that that person has had. And they also cannot help that person because they're not experiencing it themselves. The change should also occur within 2 weeks. So this madness where we continue like rollouts for like months on end, that's not helping anyone. That's not going to encourage them to make the change. All that's going to do is piss them off. And you need to provide help and support. So when I say help and support, I mean the purpose of the change. Just don't make random changes and don't say why. One thing that we didn't notice when I was going through the tweets and we did the timeline of what Twitter were doing is that they were just making changes because other sites had made changes. That's totally still happening because Flickr decided to have their button on the level. We're totally going to do the same thing. No, you make changes that are beneficial. And if you're going to do that, you explain why you're doing it because it just adds confusion, unnecessary confusion. Community champions. See, I like the idea that they got the celebrities, but it was totally kind of ridiculous because the only people that could relate were fans of those celebrities. And from the perspective of people with cerebral palsy, they were like, yeah, I can kind of relate to Angelina Jolie, but you know, come on. So my view on that is that, yeah, change champions are like, they're a good thing, but we should have them that are relatable to the community. So if you think that your change is really going to affect, in this example, people with cerebral palsy, your change champion should be an organization that reflects that community. They understand that community. They understand that if you cannot get access to that community, they're more likely to understand what the issues are with what you're attempting to do. And they can also help provide support for that community during that whole rollout phase. You should also provide support for problem solving from the beginning. No one should assume blindly that people are just going to accept little errors or that we're all so magically perfect that when we roll anything out, everything's totally perfect and there are no errors. That is not the case. We all make mistakes and you need to plan for it. The third stage is persuade. I agree, Mike. Yeah, it is. My banging on the desk is totally passion. The third stage is persuade. You need to persuade people, but you need to do it in a way where you're on their level. You're not like, right, most people, well, I'm changing this, and yeah, you're going to accept it, and that's just basically how it is. No, because people are not going to accept it. People are going to leave. And from this perspective of people with cerebral palsy, this is a lifeline. Why would you purposely make them leave your platform, which is effectively what some people have said to me? It feels like they're being alienated. Why? That just seems criminally wrong. So in the persuade stage, I think if you're going to do this rollout, it's inevitable. Everyone does this. I would propose an overlap procedure. When I say an overlap procedure, I mean at least let them have access to the old interface for a bit. You see a bit. Flickr have been doing that for the last year or so, and it's really helpful because it means that you're giving people a chance to learn the new user interface or the new system, whatever it is that you're trying to change, but they're still able to use the software that they've got in place, their assistive technologies, the knowledge that they've already learned, like the task-free learning, like I was saying, so they can still use the platform and get the help to gradually move over. Consultation during the persuade stage is good. So, I mean, you do see that. What do you think of the new Twitter? What do you think of the new Flickr? But so people give their opinions, like it's effing this, it's effing that, but you never get feedback. So, like, why are they asking? Why are you asking for feedback from your very vulnerable users if you're not actually feeding back on what they're actually telling you? There's no point. All you're doing is inciting anger because they know that you're not listening. So that would be a good thing to do. Again, with the change champions, during the persuade stage, the change champions are not just going to encourage them to change, but they're also going to provide the support if you don't know much about that community. Why isolate yourself? I don't understand why social media providers like Twitter and Facebook feel this need to isolate themselves from the people that understand their users more than they do. Information should be provided. So user interface updates, problem solving, impending, the next stage when you plan to move over to the complete change, and links to feedback and resources like I was saying earlier. I also think that change agents should engage with non-acceptors. So when I was analyzing the tweets and I was coming across people who had cerebral palsy who were saying this is just completely wrong, I'm never going to accept it, I'm going to leave. You need to ask why, so you can go forward, make changes, or even support them, provide them with reassurance. So if it is a problem with whatever the change is, which is preventing them from using the system and they're going to move away, you can reassure them that it's going to be corrected. Reassurance is always key for accepting change because generally humans don't like to change. But if you reassure, they will move forward slowly. So my fourth stage is the refreeze. And essentially, the refreeze is, sorry that I'm talking so fast, I've just seen John's one. Okay, I'll slow down a bit if that helps. So essentially the refreeze, it occurs to basically everyone at the same time. So it links back to the rollout phase where you hear people say, okay, right, so I don't have access to the previous system. I seem to have to use this one now. Why? When my friend has it. Everyone should get the new system at the same time so they can support each other. This idea of like people who have got the old system, it was seen when I was looking at the comments and I was interviewing people and observing them that there was favoritism going on, which is insane. It's not the case at all, but that's how they saw it. Oh, my friends who have cerebral palsy who live in Canada, oh, they don't have to use the new system because they're closer to where Facebook are located. Us British people, we have to do it. That's just insane. That's not the case at all, but that's how they were totally seeing it. And again, community champions, they can encourage the change, they can support the change throughout. And then finally, step 5 is after. At this point, it seems that social media providers just don't do anything. They make the change and then they disappear for months and then until a new change comes. That's not what you want to do. You want to keep engaging. You want to understand where you went wrong. You want to evaluate what you did. This is so simple and I don't understand why people don't do it. You need to evaluate where you went wrong. You need to communicate with the community. You need to understand their frustrations. You need to take it on and you need to feedback and you need to ensure that you adjust your process the next time around so you don't come up with this again. Because one thing I found over the last few years is that these problems are highlighted and they just repeat over and over and over to the point that whenever I see a change occurring, especially on Twitter or on Facebook, I'm just rolling my eyes because I know everyone's going to say the same thing and it's just wrong and it's completely unnecessary. So essentially what I'm saying is that the research that I did, it was about storytelling, it was about understanding the cerebral palsy communities and their frustration with change management in social media. And the premise was basically to come up with an approach, a process, a guideline, whatever you would like to refer to it, really, that can help social media providers to move forward, make changes that don't impact this particular community so massively, that don't alienate them, that allows people like my mum, who literally survives communicatively at home, using Facebook, using Twitter, such a lifeline for her, so she doesn't get cut off. I don't want to be getting those calls again where it's like, Makayla, I don't know how to send this message. I've not been able to really communicate with anyone all day. And she is in tears. And I'm like, I work miles away and I'm like, there's nothing I can do. And it's just awful. It's just so sad and we don't want it to happen. But what you might have noticed from like the presentation so far is that everything that I've highlighted, well, it's just simple. It's bloody simple. So why are they not doing it? And the responses I've gotten is basically because there is not a guideline, process, or structure in place that is based on solid data. Well, you're bloody lying, because there is, and it's been there since September 2012 online. You're just too flipping lazy to look. It is there. And that just bugs me. So, next bit. So basically, I think what this quote from one of I did some follow-ups afterwards to see what the CP community felt about these changes, and this quote kind of highlights it. If they did this, it would make life and communicating with my friends easier. I wouldn't feel so alienated when change occurs. I would have time to adjust. I use a head switch and it takes time to remember everything. At least I could practice but still use the old version. I like this a lot. Do you think Facebook will follow it? Well, no. I mean, my response there was, I was like, hopefully. The papers are out there. I've presented this throughout the whole PhD. It was sharing it. But no, it hasn't happened. And it just bugs me because it's so simple. So I finished a PhD in September, and I still kept an eye on it. I'm a massive social media user. I think that's another reason for my motivation, is that I saw the benefits that my mum was having because I'm using it actively myself. So I followed the change process. I was presenting everywhere throughout the whole of 2012 and last year about this. And I mean, there was some good responses. So at the beginning, Flickr, yeah, it was excellent. They were making the changes, and they were using the persuade, the overlap procedure for a short period so people could adjust, which was nice, and providing information. They started up Flickr groups, and there were people who were actually responding. That was lovely. And they had a refreeze, and they were giving information when you would log in, when you had to make the change. And they were constantly reminding you and providing you with support, and they were having consultations occasionally, which was really nice. They were doing it. Also along that time, I mean, I think Twitter improved. I detected that there was a step one, so they were giving limited knowledge. I mean, they were saying, well, okay, we're going to make a change next week. They weren't really saying what it was going to be because, you know, it's all the suspense. No, it's not the suspense. You're just annoying people right now. It ain't suspense at all. But they were giving some information. They also made a change to step two. So like the rollout became shorter. So the rollout wasn't 6 months. I mean, I don't know what they were thinking. That was bizarre. But they went down to approximately around a month-ish, which is still an improvement. And they had an overlap for one of the changes during 2013, which I thought was really useful. I went back to the CP community. So the good thing is I'd finished my PhD, but because my mum has CP, I'm still heavily involved in that community, and I do a lot of volunteering. So I would ask when I would go to community centres, what do you think? And people were liking the fact that these things were taking place on Twitter and Flickr. They loved it. They were like, they're kind of listening to us. They're kind of considering my feelings. This is brilliant. I'm going to stick with them. I'm going to keep trying. So what happened? I have no idea. This year began and it was like, oh, that PhD from like 18 months ago, yeah, we followed it for a bit and people weren't so pissed off. Well, we don't really need to follow it anymore because, you know, we kind of pleased and we can just go back to old habits. That's essentially what has happened. So at the beginning, with the Twitter layout, they provided some step one, like we're going to make this amazing change, but they never really said what it was or when anyone was going to get it. So they were going back to old habits. They provided an unfreeze, which was good. So they said when the unfreeze occurred, they did the short rollout again, which was nice. The overlap wasn't there, but it was nice. I mean, it was slightly there, but it seemed to be that it was restricted to only a few users, and those users seemed to be in Canada or America. Everywhere else, it didn't seem to be actively present. So that annoyed people. Flickr, on the other hand, at the beginning of the year, they were excellent. I detected step 1 and step 2 was added, so they were providing more information, which was good. They were providing a date for when the unfreeze, the new change was going to occur. This was brilliant. And then the beginning of last month happened, and I don't know what happened. They must have either someone was hit on the head with a rock and forgot everything they had been doing for the last year and a half, but none of the first 3 steps were just completely removed. They just felt the need to then just fling it out. There was no overlap. There was no persuade. And then they had consultation, but people were giving feedback that we didn't like it. And I watched it for the whole of April, and there was no one ever responded, which was just so bizarre. So yeah, we've started to move backwards. I mean, what you would have noticed from these 2 updates is that Facebook, my lovely Facebook. What have they done? Well, they've done bugger all, really. I mean, the approach is out there. I've given presentations at CSUN, at Assets, about this model. I know they've been sitting in the room because they've introduced myself occasionally. So I know they're in the room. But they have done nothing. They're still on this whole mind, we're like the biggest social networking platform, people are so reliant on us. Yes, people are relying on you, especially those who are very vulnerable and have very severe disabilities. They are relying on you. You're aware of this. But why are you not trying to make it a bit easier? It doesn't just benefit the people who have cerebral palsy. It only is going to benefit everyone, right? So yeah, that's bugged me considerably. So my overall comment is basically, please consider users with motor impairments when you change your social website. And I've put social in quotes because, as you would have noticed, all of the stuff that I said is I think it's quite generic. Generic in a way that it's not restricted to social media. I've used a case study of social media because it's so valuable to this particular community, those with cerebral palsy, especially from my own perspective of seeing it and from when I was doing the interviews and the observations. I mean, what I should say that those interviews and observations, the main focus was social media, but I also asked about other internet use, and that always came up. It always came up. So I would, for example, one user would say, well, I love going to theatre, so I always research on Google what plays are good. But I never really rely on the reviews. I prefer my friends' reviews. So I'd like to ask them to come with me. So I always go back to Facebook, or I always go back to Twitter. So social media was just a popular thing where all of the tasks they were doing, it was driving it back there. So it just made sense to focus there. But everything that I've done, as I said, is simple. It is so flipping simple that you could plausibly apply it to other things. So I think one takeaway message from this presentation is that it's just not restricted to communication. You could apply this to your WordPress sites if it's something really big. You could apply this to anything. So frequently asked questions. I mean, I think my presentation has been pretty quick. I talk pretty quick, as John noted earlier. Frequently asked questions to help you guys before we get into the question and answer phase is people always ask me, could the step process be useful to social media users with other disabilities? Yes, totally yes. The whole premise of my PhD was the bubble up approach. We're going to start with people who have very severe disabilities, very severe forms of cerebral palsy, because hopefully if we can help them, we can hopefully help others who have less severe forms of cerebral palsy. I mean, I think one example that I had is when I was doing an observation with one particular person, we'll call her Zoe, for instance. She had a very severe form of cerebral palsy. That meant that her head control was extremely limited, so limited that she could barely focus on the screen for more than a few seconds. So she was essentially blind to the screen because she was using a screen reader. She couldn't see it, even though she had perfect vision. So you could plausibly say in certain aspects of the research that we found it could apply to visually impaired users. So the premise was generally to bubble up. Next question, which I'm always asked, was could the step process be applied to other web services? Which I've said before, yes, it has. I mean, one thing I found interesting that in the last few months, it's been applied within the citizen science space by Zooniverse, which is an organization based in Oxford University that creates tagging. So the premise is that you want to bring people who are outside science into the world of science to help them tag. It could be clusters within space. One of them is Snapshot Serengeti, where you identify animals, for instance. And they found that a lot of their users were users that had cognitive impairments because it was used a lot in those schools. So they took my approach and have kind of, like, you could say, started using it. Because I mean, I've looked at the work that they've done, and what I kind of did, I went back to my local disability community centre, and I looked around, and yeah, people who had cognitive impairments were using this. They found it really fun, and they were telling me, yeah, we use this in schools occasionally. And my mum, she loves the Operation War Diaries. So they've taken the approach, they've changed it a bit. So like the Change Champions, they haven't massively used, but what they've done, they've implemented a forum behind all of the stuff that they've got. They have an active forum, and they get the historians to answer questions. They have the developers to answer questions when changes are occurring. So yeah, it can be used in other locations. The final question that people like to ask me is the research available? Yes. All of the stuff that I have done and spoken about today is available on at http://openaccess.city.ac.uk/3011/. And in there, I was cheeky because I put all of the papers that I got accepted into the appendix. So basically, it summarizes the whole PhD, so no one has to pay for it. So yes, it is totally available. That presentation was a lot quicker than I thought it would be. So if you guys have any questions, that would be, feel free to ask. That would be brilliant. That is me. I'm just going through the chat to see if there's any questions that I missed. Mike asks, why do Twitter and Facebook separate themselves? Well, it's quite simple. They're each other's competition. I don't think they should separate themselves. I think the learnings that each of them get could benefit each other. But essentially, it's competition, isn't it? Oh, playground behavior. So what they observe is what I call playground behavior or locker room talk. Yeah, I kind of agree. But the thing which I find bizarre about the whole thing is that I've never worked for either platform. But I was able to download all of the public tweets and all the public messages and analyze it myself. They have resources that are beyond one PhD student with barely any budget and a MacBook. That's all I had to do this. So there is no reason why they couldn't do this. Engage with their community, see what people are saying. I honestly think that they have people who monitor those hashtags that they recommend that we use when they make change, but that person is clearly doing something else. It's just scrolling, but it's not actually reading them, not actually taking it on. It's just going in and then just coming straight out. And yes, I would agree that Disability Land, that book is absolutely brilliant. I'd recommend that too. Okay. Any other questions? I'm happy to answer. And yes, Carl, all the papers are completely free. The PhD is completely free. I don't want anyone to feel kind of like, my God, she wrote for like 400 odd pages, because that PhD is stupidly long. But if you go to Appendix A, which is on the second volume of that, on that link, all of the papers are there. Failing that, all of the papers are also on my website, which is on the slide. So here, you can download them there. But one of the reasons why I recommend getting it from the PhD is because I also give summaries at the top of them. With the Facebook one, they have the Facebook accessibility team. So I've seen a lot of people. The question was, hang on, let me go back. As a frustrated user with a motor disability myself, who should I contact Facebook to get their attention? Well, Facebook are on. They have an accessibility team that is on Twitter, but they're not massively engaging. So I do see occasionally, like with the Twitter client that I use, you can see the messages that people send. So I do look occasionally. So you can send your questions or your frustrations there, but I mean, the chances of getting a response are pretty slim. There's also the blog platform, where people leave messages. But again, the issue is that people leave messages, they get frustrated because they're communicating with other users who are frustrated, but they never get a response. So I think the problem with Facebook is that we need to get them to understand that communication with your users is what is key. Asking them to send in responses, their frustrations, doesn't help if you don't actually listen and you don't actually show that you're listening. Okay, so what specific changes did users with CP find hard to cope with and why? So a specific change. Changes like location. So location was a major issue. So something had moved from one particular location. So for example, like I said earlier, the log out button. This particular user got very, very distressed because she was concerned that people would be able to log in when she left her computer. So, but it was only moved slightly, and one of the reasons why she couldn't see it is because this was Zoe, the individual who had very poor head control. So she just couldn't see where the log out button had occurred, and she'd always been told you have to log out of everything. You need to lock your doors. You need to be secure with your things. So that really distressed her. I would say another thing was it was all mainly, I would say, just the location of things, massive location changes. So if I go back to a previous slide, one sec, the earlier slides that shows the differences, that might help. So we look at the Twitter differences. So just the overall change of like where your information was. So if you went to a profile and you're used to seeing everyone's there, send them a message was at the top, and all of a sudden it was hidden in a column, and it was never made clear that that was the case. The search option had moved. It was mainly when things were moving because they had learned how to where things were, so they didn't even need to look at the screen to get to them. And has that answered your question, Claire? So yeah, it was mainly locations of things, and it just meant that there had to be task relearning in the process of that. Okay, hang on, going down. Yeah, I agree, Gary. He says that, like with everyone else, they don't pay attention to speech recognition software users such as Dragon Naturally Speaking. Yeah, I would agree. They don't. I think they don't. I think one of the issues what I've found with when I've spoken to people and I've given the example of Zoe is that, hang on a minute, she's using a screen reader, but she can see her disability is only motor impairments. I don't need to consider screen reader use for her. So I think that they seem to silo assessive devices for particular communities. And I think one of the main reasons why, from my own personal perspective, with my mum having cerebral palsy, when her occupational therapist would assess her once a year, she would be like, can I have, for example, I remember a few years ago, can I have a screen reader? She's like, well, you're not blind, you don't need it. I know that only visually impaired people or blind people can have that, so I cannot allocate it. So that siloing of assessive technology doesn't help. I'm just going through any questions I haven't answered. Has anyone, okay, Jonathan answers, Makayla, has anyone else taken your research or rollout advice and turned it into a novice-friendly checklist? So I've seen a few people write checklists on change management, and I can see in some cases they've probably gotten it from what I've seen because it has that kind of overlap. But the way I've kind of gone about it, that was one thing that I was concerned about, because ultimately it's a PhD and you have to write in this academic manner that no one ever really understands, and it's quite boring. So that's one reason why, if I'm going to the slide, the breakdown is actively available. So I put it into a visual form, and I've broken it down into basically plain English, which is slide 20. So I have attempted to do that, and I have seen some people do it. But if anyone wants to have a chat with me and make it a lot more simpler, hey ho, I'm up for that. If it helps, then I'm willing for it. Regarding gestures, because I was starting from a perspective of people who had very severe motor impairments, very severe cerebral palsy, none of them were actively using like tablets or their phones or anything like that. They were using keyboards, mice, pointers. The shame about we were using this platform is I had loads of videos that I would have shown you that would have demonstrated this. But if you want to see those videos, send me an email to, hang on, I'm just writing it, and I will send you Dropbox links to these videos that shows you the kind of technology and their setup. Because one thing I did with the observations, that I just wasn't just following them around. I recorded and drew their setup in every location whenever they use social media. So I have that if you'd like to see it. Just send me an email. Yes, Gary, I've just put my email underneath your message. Just reading through. Yes, Jonathan. Anyone who's willing to help out, distribute it. I mean, I say why not? I think if more people are talking about it, the better, really. I mean, it's bugged me because I presented so much in one year. I presented all over the place, traveling everywhere. But I think we need to. I'm tempted to get it into more of like an infographic form, so it is on their walls, so they see the simple steps that they need to do. They are reminded when they're about to deploy something. So maybe if anyone's interested in maybe going down that kind of route, that could be a good thing. The slide deck I'm going to upload as soon as we finish onto SlideShare. My SlideShare account is, hang on, let me get a link to it. It's essentially slideshare.com/Makayla Lewis 1. But if you follow me on Twitter, which is MaccyMac, so MaccyMacx, I will put a link there. I'm also going to do a sketch note summary of the whole presentation, and I'm going to do a kind of transcript of that sketch note as well. So you could feel free to print that sketch note up and put up on your walls, and it could remind your development teams to think about change. So I'm going to do that. Any other questions? I think I've asked everything. If anyone's got any other questions, feel free. Oh, a lot of people are typing now. Okay, cool. I think we might be done then.
Thanks, Makayla. That was very well done and very, very passionate. I think we all really enjoyed your presentation this afternoon, or this evening, depending on where you are, right?
Sorry?
I said this afternoon, but I guess it's this evening where you are.
Yeah, it is 8:45 p.m. Ooh. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
It's good. It's something nice to be doing. I think it's for a brilliant cause, and if it gets the awareness out there, I would have happily presented at 3 a.m.
Well, next time if we do it again, we'll keep that in mind.
No, I'm just joking. No.
All right. Well, thank you very, very much, Makayla.
Okay, then. Thank you. See you later, everyone. Bye.